Today we'll be talking about WebAwesome Free, what it is and why we made it. And today we have Lindsay Miller here to talk us through it. So before we get down into the weeds, why did we build WebAwesome in the first place?
So the biggest reason that we made WebAwesome is to try to allow you to have the power to snap things together and build things really quickly, as well as keeping things really unique and matching your brand's unique personality and character. One of the biggest challenges with designing websites is that you have to make the choice between whether you want to build your own custom design system or whether you want to take a cookie cutter pre-made solution and get up and running really quickly. And there's a lot of trade-offs with both of those choices. So if you're building your own design system, that takes time and a ton of it. A lot of maintenance associated with that too. You generally need a whole team. Like design systems are very intense things to build and take a lot of effort. Whereas with the more out of the box solution, you get up and running really quickly, but your website tends to look a bit like everything else.
Not a whole lot of personality.
Exactly. So we want to have both of those things. We wanted to build something that allows you to assemble things really quickly, get started, get running, have your website ready to go, and also be able to imbue that entire website and design with your own personality, exact representation of your brand, not making any concessions in that regard.
So it sounds like you're basically saying people are forced into a situation where they're having to choose between custom or fast, right?
Yep, exactly. So our solution to that is basically saying, why not both of those things? With both WebAwesome Free and WebAwesome Pro, you have the power of web components in all of their encapsulated glory, which basically just means that your HTML and your CSS can work harmoniously together without becoming a tangled mess. And in this version of WebAwesome, we've made it easier than ever to theme components.
So why web components? Why are they such a big deal?
Web Components uses completely native browser technologies, usually in the form of custom elements, so that you can encapsulate a lot of behavior into what is essentially just a plain HTML tag. And
Okay.
the beautiful thing about that is your HTML stays completely readable. You don't have all of this gunk associated with what the behavior is. You just have a really semantic name. And then with the new theming API that we've added for manual theming, any CSS styles that you write for those components theme seamlessly throughout the entire library. So everything matches the look and feel of your brand.
And this is all totally framework agnostic, isn't that right?
Yep, web components are completely
Nice.
based on standard browser behaviors. So whether you're using any CSS preprocessors or JavaScript frameworks like React, Vue, doesn't matter. Web components works just fine with them all. So you can use a framework if you choose, but you actually don't have to either.
So I always like to think of real world situations and how to envision things. So it'd be kind of like being able to change the color of your bricks instead of just tearing apart the building, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially in contrast with utility based CSS, you don't have to go back and rewrite thousands of lines of HTML to rename or remove any unwanted classes. The great thing about our theming API is everything just threads through those web components and it just works. So with our new theming API, you have global CSS custom properties for high level theming. You have all new scoped custom properties for every single component. And you have the CSS parts that you know and love from Shoelace to be able to make WebAwesome your own and style anything to look any way that you want.
So I understand that you have a demo for us today, Lindsay.
Yes, I do. Let's dig in. So on the right side here, we have a sample page, which is completely built with WebAwesome components using our theming API. And I have a few things that I'd want to customize with this to really make it my own. So for this particular brand that I'm working with, I have a couple of custom colors that I'd want to add. We have this nice Let's Go Lime and then Soil, appropriately named because we're dealing with perhaps some kind of plant nursery business. So I'm going to throw those into this default theme that comes standard with WebAwesome. I'm just going to add these two new colors in with the rest of them. And then I'll update our primary colors to this Let's Go Lime for our primary, and our gray, or our base color, which will be used for the background, borders, all sorts of the neutral colors will change to that soil. Let's see how that looks. All right, now we're seeing our green used for our brand color, or our Let's Go Lime, I should say, used for our brand color, and then we're getting a nice, more brown neutral color used for our base colors over there. The next thing I want to update on this is changing the surface colors a little bit. So surfaces in this case refers to like the backdrops of the page. So I'm going to darken those up just a little bit. So we'll add a slight tinge to our default surface. We'll keep raised white, and then we will darken lowered. And we'll also darken our surface border color and see how that looks for us. So just adding a little bit more tint to those colors. And we can see now that the background kind of changed to be slightly darker, which is exactly what we wanted to happen. And now let's see what else we want to change here. I'm thinking that green needs to be a little bit brighter. So I'll come down to this semantic color section in our default theme. And I will just go ahead and change this guy to be 80, which in this color scheme, that makes it a little bit brighter. And then we'll change the text color for what appears in that button to be our normal body text color. Let's see how that looks. There we go. What I think needs to happen next is maybe we will darken our neutral colors. So that's just as easy. We'll come down to our semantic neutrals. We'll darken each of these up just a smidge. Every single one. And what I'm doing here is just adding or changing each of these values to just be a shade darker than normal or than the default. And that'll be good for that. Let's see what we got. All right, you can see the border colors stand out just a little bit more, which is what we were looking for there. And I think this nice performance system font is quick to load and everything. Don't have to think too much about it, but we want something a little bit more custom for this theme. So I'm going to add a different font for our heading. And then for our body, do still a sans serif font, but just something slightly different. Make it a little bit more round. And we'll come over here. And there we go. Next thing I want to do is this button text I think could be a little bit bolder. So I'm going to go to this font weight action property. Just bump that up from medium to heavy and see what that does for us. There we go. We'll also increase our root font size to be 18 pixels. So everything should, if we did this correctly, just scale up a tad, which it did. Looking good there. Our spacing I think is good, but what I also want to happen is, maybe we want our borders to be a little bit more bold for this theme, where we want just a little bit more of a brutalist edge to what we got going on here. So I have this border width base value that is used, as we can see down below, as a multiplier for these other border width properties. So if I want to increase everything at once, I'll just update that. And we can see that, for our details elements, our inputs, all of those borders kind of just bumped up a tad, which is what we were looking for. And the corners generally we like in this theme, but say that we want to ensure that any one of our inputs, any one of our buttons are using a pill shaped. So there's a way you can do that with the component itself. WebAwesome offers a pill attribute for a lot of these components so that they're automatically just rounded. But there's also, on the global theming level, a set of component group properties, which we have form controls corners. So we can go ahead and change that to be corners pill, and that should round those out for us. So if we want to do something more with some of our components that aren't covered with the global theming API, we can adjust the custom properties at the component level to make something quite different than the default styles here. So I've pre-written some styles for our branded buttons. So any of these lime green buttons that we have, I'll just copy this over and I'll scroll down to the bottom of our global CSS. Just paste that in here. So basically what I want to happen with these styles is to add a nice gradient from that lime green to a normal green on those branded buttons, and then also add a really thick border on those to really make it stand out and pop. And there we have that. If I want to go a little bit further, I can say take that badge element that we see right at the top of this page here. I want to add a border to that too. I've written styles for that already. All I have to do now is just move that over to the default CSS, and we'll see what that looks like too. There we go. But if we want to go a step further too, we can use CSS parts, which are already offered on all of these components. So here, again, I've written out the style just to save us some time, but we have taking that brand button, targeting specifically the label of that, and we're going to add a white text shadow to make that text kind of get this nice inset appearance on it. And you can see there on this button now that we have just a nice bottom highlight to that text to make it look very different. And that's just a taste really of what you can accomplish with those, the global theming API, the custom properties for each component, and the CSS parts that, again, exist in Shoelace and are still supported in WebAwesome Free and WebAwesome Pro. And the best part about this, I would say, is that if we come into what this looks like behind the scenes, this is still just HTML. It's still using native CSS. All of the web components that are used in here are just standard JavaScript, nothing that you need a third-party tool to control or to be able to process or anything like that. We can see in the HTML we have, a few of these WebAwesome components in there, which semantically named, look really nice. It's pretty easy to read. And if you have other pages, like I have all these pages that are also using that same theme now, they just match. And I didn't have to do any extra work to make those match that product page that we were looking at initially.
Thanks for taking us through the demo. And it looks like we kind of get the best of both worlds now. We've got custom and quick.
Absolutely. With the new global theming API that we've added, in addition to all of those new custom properties that we've added to every component, it's easier than ever to make WebAwesome Free and Pro completely your own.
That is so great. So can you break it down for us?
Certainly. All of that amounts to less time scouring your code base to find things that you need to update because it's all encapsulated where it needs to be. It means less time dealing with merge conflicts on your team, working better together, having everything unified and in the right place. It means a fresh look and feel whenever the mood strikes without having to rewrite HTML. And it means that there's no need for third-party preprocessors or frameworks unless you happen to want to use those, in which case it's all good. Everything works great with those too.
So I think this is the point where we say, but wait, there's more.
Absolutely right. We've got stretch goals to add even more components into WebAwesome Free. So if the Kickstarter does really well, everybody wins. If you want to theme even faster and leave the CSS behind the scenes, check out our theme builder with WebAwesome Pro. We'll help you transform your brand into your own custom theme. On top of that, WebAwesome Pro gets you theme documentation and a growing library of pre-built patterns to just copy and paste. Check out our other videos to learn more.
Thanks, Lindsay, for walking us through that. And if that all sounds good, you can back our Kickstarter and let's all go make something awesome.
Web awesome, go make something awesome.